Hello, everybody, and welcome to Right Here, Right Now, live Buffalo football talk presented by Forefathers Organics. I'm your host, Alex Brasky, alongside my guest today, Dr. Kyle Trimble, physical therapist and owner of bangedupbills.com. You can follow him on X at bangedupbills. We wanted to provide an injury update, a bit more thorough than myself and Ajay could provide, so we brought Dr. Trimble in and going to get his thoughts on a few of the key injuries of the many that the Bills are suffering through right now. But before we get to our conversation, let us first thank our sponsor, Forefathers Organics in Dansville.
Unlock the power of nature with Forefathers Organics, your premium CBD store. We offer the highest quality CBD and hemp products to liberate your mind, body, and soul, helping you live happy and free. Our mission is driven by excellence and transparency, using cutting-edge scientific methods to combat stress and target issues at their source. From potent ingestible CBD to soothing topicals, all our products are USDA certified organic. Discover all natural wellness from farm to table. Visit forefathersorganics.com for more information.
All right, let's get to it. Nice to have you, Doc. Thanks for joining me on short notice. I know you're as busy as the rest of us with all these injuries coming on for the Bills. It's certainly a busy time for you, for sure.
It really is, but that's what I enjoy doing this. And, people have come to know where to find when they need injuries. So I'm happy to provide the information.
Yeah, it's kind of a tough situation because it's obviously something you're passionate about. It is your profession, but at the same time, it comes at the expense of these players who go through these injuries. And you being a Bills fan, you're one of the last ones that want to see this happen. So certainly not a positive conversation, but great to bring you in and provide Bills fans with some clarity. And like I said, more so than the non-medical professionals such as myself could provide. Let's start with the most significant of the injuries to Matt Milano, the linebacker who sustained that season-ending leg injury a season ago. Now what looks like a lengthy bicep injury, although there is a chance that he can return this season, and that's where I bring you in. I want to get your perspective on it. I've heard late November, early December. What's your timeline? What's your view on Milano's potential return to the Bills this season?
So I know that late November, early December timeline was given by my buddy, Dr. David Chow, Pro Football Doc. He's certainly far more knowledgeable and a lot older than I am. I think that might be a little aggressive based off of what the Bills do, but it wouldn't be unrealistic if that were the case. I was anticipating more of a mid-December to late December return, just because you want to make sure that he doesn't return back too quickly. They've been cautious about returning guys back. We saw that with Daquan Jones last year with his pectoral injury, and other guys where they try to hold themselves back and protect themselves against themselves so that they're not rushing back out there too quickly, causing setbacks and just really not being effective. So I'm anticipating more of a mid to late December, maybe catch the last, 2 or 3 like regular season games and then get him ready for the playoffs there. So it's going to come down to just how well everything's healing. It is a pretty reliable surgery because they just have to put a button at the end of the tendon, drill through the ulna, and then bring it back up through, the radius, and then let it start healing back up and everything. So I've rehabbed these before. They can be sped up somewhat, but you still have to make sure that you're not overworking the muscle and the tendon. So there's going to be overstretching or a potential setback with that. So when he does come back, I do worry about him having the ability to fully wrap up tackles, not to worry about shedding blockers, but he's just going to have to engage and he's going to lose some grip strength too, because the bicep does help with supination and you do have to grip and turn your hands in to help grab guys. So he's not going to be 100% when he does return, but if you can get a 75% Matt Milano playing in coverage, I'd be pretty happy with that. So they're going to push him, but they're also make sure that they're going to save him from himself so he doesn't be lost for the entire season.
And you talk about 75% of Matt Milano, especially with the state of the position. We all remember last year during the playoff game when they had to bring Ajay Klein off the couch. I know that they have much more faith in Dorian Williams in his second year, and Balin Spector, another player on the injury report who is coming on during training camp. And that's where I want to go next, just before we move on from the linebacker position. Where is Balin Spector at? Nicholas Moreau. Moreau has been out for quite some time. Spector recently sustaining this injury. It does appear as if Moreau will participate in walkthroughs and individual drills this week per Sean McDermott. So a good sign for him. But Balin Spector, a player that has had trouble working his way through injury throughout his career. His production on the field when he's been on the field has really been there, but he's had trouble remaining available, and another injury for him, and a calf injury, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, something he's worked through before.
I don't remember off the top of my head if he had the right calf injury before. He did have the hamstring injuries last year, which caught him out a good portion of the season. But it goes back to the soft tissue stuff he's dealt with before. I believe there might be a groin injury in there at some point, and I know he had the back injury that kept him out of the playoff game. He's just always kind of battling through something. And while he did that in college too, it's, what comes down to is your best trait is availability. So if he can stay healthy, then he can actually be producing. And the team does believe in him. They put him out on first team reps at one point last year during training camp, so they know he can play the position. But if he can't be available to get those reps in during the regular season and be available when it's called upon, then he's kind of relegated to the bench, to special teams, and those spot plays here and there. We know that the injury happened, I believe, about Tuesday, because he was practicing fine last week, and then he showed up in Pittsburgh with a sleeve on his right calf. So you're looking at probably just over 2 weeks from the return. So he's probably not going to, well, we know he's not going to play in Saturday's game against the Panthers because it's week to week, but he could be rested and ready to play for week one. You just got to wonder if he's going to see more time on defense or exclusively special teams.
And a few others that are making their way back along with Moreau. A couple of the safeties that have been out for quite some time. Damar Hamlin joining Cole Bishop and Mike Edwards on the injury report. But as soon as Hamlin goes out, Edwards and Bishop starting to ramp up their activity. They will also participate in walkthroughs and individual drills this week, while Hamlin week to week with a hamstring injury. So what do you see from Edwards and Bishop here? Bishop with the shoulder, Edwards with the hamstring. It's been quite a few weeks for them. Obviously, a lot expected of both of those players kind of coming in and filling the shoes of two veterans that leave this system. But it's been a slow go for them. How quickly do you believe that they'll be able to ramp things up? I don't believe Coach McDermott said that Edwards or Bishop will have a chance to play in the game this weekend, but certainly a good sign that the walkthroughs and individual drills are part of their practice routine now.
So we'll hit on Edwards first. I had looked earlier when he suffered the injury. I believe it was July 28th. Forgive me if the date is wrong, but I had looked at during the training camp when guys have a hamstring injury, they tend to keep them out a little bit longer than they do regular season. 3 weeks in preseason versus 2 weeks in the regular season. So he's on track based off how they manage his hamstring injuries. And the one hallmark of the Bills training staff is when you have an injury like this, with a calf or a hamstring or some of the soft tissue lower extremity, they tend to not reoccur later on in the season. So if this is their way of being cautious that, hey, we're going to wait till you're fully ready to go before we get you back out there, that's a good sign. He stuck to it that they're going to at least get back in individual drills before they return to practice to some capacity. So he's going to need some ramp up time because he's been off the last 3 weeks. It's just going to come down to when he can, slowly ramp back up and get in the defense. He is a veteran. I'm sure he's been studying the entire time. It just might take some time to get him back up from a physical standpoint and make sure that he's not going to have any setbacks with the hamstring. As for Bishop, he did suffer that injury falling out of the air during the pass deflection on July 30th. There was an unconfirmed report that was saying that it was a fractured scapula. That very well could be the case. If that is, he's about halfway through his rehab healing time. And it's a good sign that he's returning back to individual drills because that's all non-contact. He can get more lower body conditioning working and kind of get back in the swing of things there. And that also tells me that he would be healing in the right direction too, that they're comfortable with the arm moving around without jostling any potential fracture, if that is indeed the case. So both are trending in the right direction. It's just unfortunate they've missed so much time on the field to get those physical reps in instead of, getting mental reps.
And very unfortunate for Damar Hamlin. Excuse me. He had such a great, excuse me, frog in my throat here. I've been to 4 high school football practices today, done interviews with all of them. So I think my voice might be waning at this moment. But Damar Hamlin, quite the offseason, quite the training camp, has worked himself into the first team opportunity due to injury. And he's really ran with it, but unfortunate hamstring injury sustained during that joint practice with the Steelers. He was held out during most of team drills. He said after practice it was relatively minor, the nature of the injury, and the coaches were just kind of being cautious with it. Kind of what you were saying earlier with Edwards, those soft tissue injuries, especially with the hamstring, something that can linger throughout the course of the season. But certainly unfortunate timing for Hamlin, as he seemed to be working his way into a starting opportunity and now set back with the other two ramping things up.
And with Hamlin too, I mean, they said it was something minor, and it might be indeed something minor, but with all the injuries and safety, they can't afford to let anybody go play through things. Like they've done that before with older players and, veteran players in general, but in the preseason and you're already down 2 or 3 safeties, you can't afford to let somebody go out there that lingers. So hopefully it's not as significant as maybe Edwards' injury was, but if he can at least get back, it looks like all 3 could come back in time for week 1 with, I'd see Edwards and Hamlin, of course, with Rapp also getting more of the playing time, and Bishop hopefully just learning the system being a rookie.
Yeah, I think that's been one of the positives for the Bills throughout training camp. These injuries, obviously a huge downer, but Taylor Rapp has really taken the bull by the horns in that safety room. I've been impressed with his command of the defense back there in the secondary, and his physicality is always going to be there, just as physical as they come at the safety position. Made a big hit on a Bears player in that first preseason game, and just has really shined throughout his time as a starter this season. Now, let's go to the wide receiver position. Curtis Samuel, a player that's expected to take on a significant role within this offense, perhaps a number 2 wide receiver role behind Khalil Shakir, and the versatility that he holds, that is Samuel, with the ability to run it out of the backfield, the ability to play inside and outside at the wide receiver position. He's certainly going to be a key component to this offense, but a player that has had injuries, an injury history, I should say, and now with this turf toe injury, something that I believe he's dealt with before. Can you give us some clarification on perhaps the significance? He was initially declared with general soreness. Now it's kind of developed into this turf toe thing, maybe something else that the Bills are being cautious with, and just maybe a bit of the injury history with Samuel, I know, dating back a few seasons.
He has quite the lengthy injury history, and I know we don't have enough time to go over all of it. If you do want to look for it, it's at bangedupbills.com, but he is constantly on the injury report. I came out and said I wasn't a fan of the signing because of the injury history and the money they're giving him. I understand the market dictated what the money was, but he was constantly beat up, and this is just the latest example. It's also worth noting that when guys are out for general soreness, vet rest days, you still want to pay attention to that, because sometimes things like this do pop up where it's like, no big deal. They're just sitting out as older player, and then boom, turf toe injury, or boom, groin. So you certainly want to pay attention to see how that stuff works, and if it's something they're just trying to play coy about. So as for the turf toe, I suspect it happened on Tuesday before they went down to Pittsburgh, because then he was out actually it might have been Monday, because he was out for 2 practices. And
Right.
then, so the days all run together with these injuries for sure.
Yep.
But to give a brief synopsis what the turf toe is, it's basically a hyperextension of the great toe. The toe bends back too quickly or too far. And then every time you're sprinting on it, you're putting that toe into further extension. Things are already stretched out in there because it's a sprain of the great toe, and you can't ever really try to get it fully healthy. I mean, rest and rehab to the area can help. And it's not an opportune time to get an injury like this, but with the time that they have before the final preseason game and before week 1, there's a better chance of him actually getting this thing somewhat healthy rather than trying to play through it as other players have. So, he did have a toe injury last year when he was in Washington. I don't know that it was a turf toe, but his stats were 8 games before, 8 games after. He did have a decrease in production after we returned for the turf toe, missing 1 game. I don't know whether that was indeed the case due to just the production of the offense, or whether it is the toe. He had about 100 yards less receiving and a few receptions less. So it might be something to watch. You hope that they can give him enough time to rest, but just they're going to handle him with kid gloves almost, just because he's had so much injury history. And you're worried that, okay, if the turf toe happens, are you going to start seeing calf injuries? You're going to start seeing hamstring, because he's trying to compensate, not being able to push off that toe as much there. So the last guy I remember having a turf toe was Zach Moss back in, I think, 2020. He did miss 3 games, though he was a rookie. They might have been slowing that one up a little bit more. It's just, everything's unfortunate with this guy, but to see him deal with an injury isn't a surprise.
And like Jeff says, my good buddy Satch in the comment section on Facebook, he's going to be so big for the Bills this year. You really do have to handle him with those kid gloves, especially in the preseason. Hopefully he gets healthy for the regular season. Before we move on from the wide receiver position, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, I know there's not a lot of clarity on this injury. He left with that neck sprain. They brought up the backboard for him. He didn't need it. He was able to make his way off under his own power. I saw him in the locker room after the game walking around. Didn't have a delightful expression on his face, but was seemingly walking around uninhibited and wearing a sweatshirt. So hopefully good news for him. They're keeping him out week to week. I think multiple weeks was what Sean McDermott said, but hopefully the long term, nothing to worry about with Marquez Valdez-Scantling.
That's the hope. And keep in mind, Tom Pelissaro, I think of his NFL Network, he did note the x-rays were negative, but that's only look at the bone. So we don't know if there's a disc issue. We don't know if there's a ligament issue. In fact, we do know there was a ligament issue because the neck sprain is a damage to the ligament. Now, what ligament that is, how damaged it is, we don't know. But they're going to have to slowly bring him back. There is pretty stringent criteria to allow a guy to return to sport after a cervical neck injury. I'm digging into that right now among all the other things I'm looking at. So they know what they want to do, and they're going to want to do imaging to at least assess to see how whatever is damaged in there is healing, and they're not going to rush him back out there. I know his grasp on a roster spot is tenuous at best, but if they think that he can come back and be productive, maybe put him on short-term IR and bring him back when he's ready. But it's good to see that he didn't have a neck brace on, or like he was walking on pain, but they wasn't backboarded off. And we've seen guys such as Dane Jackson, get carted off with pretty severe neck injuries to come back and play after a week off. So this is one thing we'll need more information for, but hopefully they don't rush him back with him being older.
And certainly with the wide receiver position as it is, and with so many players going down, I think he is a candidate to be on that short-term IR. But at the same time, with this injury list growing, it seems like each week you bring up, oh, this guy could be a candidate for short-term IR. And then the next day, oh, maybe this is just incredible, the amount of injuries that they've racked up. And that's what we'll talk about next. But before, let's thank our sponsor once more, Forefathers Organics in Dansville. Forefathers Organics, their mission is to liberate, educate, and innovate with the highest quality CBD and hemp-derived products for your mind, body, and soul so you can live happy and free. Visit them at 87 Franklin Street in Dansville, online at forefathersorganics.com, or call them at 585-335-2223 to learn more about the products they offer. And Doc, one of the things that I was interested in scrolling down your page after the injuries, as I do when any injuries happen, at Banged Up Bills on X, I found it interesting and disturbing at the same time that the Bills have already had 31 players noted with soreness, mispractice, lengthy injuries, or season-ending injuries. That is already equal to the total that they had all of last season. It exceeds the total in 2022 and is only 2 fewer than the total in 2021. Did I read that information correctly? And just provide your perspective on that and how incredible the injury trouble that the Bills are sustaining right now is.
You did read that correctly. I just do want to clarify, this is preseason, so
Gotcha.
There's far more injuries in the regular season over a
Gotcha.
17-week period. So we
so through 2 weeks they've exceeded the grand total of the past 2 seasons and are getting close to exceeding the total of 3 seasons ago. So incredible.
Yeah. And the one upside is, 2021, they had 33 different players deal with an injury, missing time, whatnot, and they had great injury luck then. So maybe they get it all out of the way early on, and then it gets better from there. But I dug into that due to asking a question to Sal Capaccio and Matt Beauvais on their podcast, and then Sal was like, "Well,
always game day in Buffalo, always a great listen."
So I dug into that, and it was kind of enlightening to see how many unique players were dealing with injury. And so it provides a context that, hey, are the injuries up? Yeah, comparatively to past seasons, they are, but it's not like we're dealing with every player on the roster or 75%. It's about a third from what we're seeing, which is not great, but we're also dealing with bigger rosters compared to the regular season.
And how about the narrative that the Bills need to change strength and conditioning staff? I know that obviously this is your line of work and you're always going to side with the athletic trainers, but it just seems, even from a non-trained eye, that narrative is just ridiculous. You look at a lot of these injuries, Matt Milano's bicep, you have his broken leg. A lot of these are unavoidable injuries. The neck injury that Marquez Valdez-Scantling suffered. So can you give us your perspective on that, and maybe talk down those folks that are calling for the heads of the Bills' strength and conditioning staff?
You can only do so much. I mean, I highlighted earlier that when they do have a soft tissue injury, those guys usually are not dealing with that soft tissue injury later on. They're not getting recurrence of the injury. I know there are some outliers, but generally,
that's really where the strength and conditioning staff
Yep.
comes in.
Yeah.
The rehab and the recovery. Prevention is also part of their job, but I think it's the most difficult part of their job because injuries are unpreventable in the NFL, and they're obviously unpredictable.
Exactly. And you see what they do getting some of these guys back. Like, for example, Daquan Jones, that pec injury he had last year usually takes 4 or 6 months. He got back in 3 months. I mean, there's other instances where guys should not be coming back as quickly as they do, but they get these guys back and they perform relatively well, all things considered. So I don't believe they should be losing their jobs or need to go in because, yeah, you might want to go replace somebody else. McDermott did that once after his first season, and it's worked out pretty well. They had a lot of great success. It just sometimes comes down to the law of averages, and you can only do so much out there. I know there's a lot of people criticizing, well, they used to be good. Well, they still are good. It just sometimes you can't control those uncontrollables there. So the only other thing I can think of that they could do is if they were bringing more staff. I know they've added staff in recent years. They have interns, both athletic trainers, PTs. They have people in there providing the care. It just sometimes the volume of it is so great. So if you want to be critical, maybe have more, but the Bills have been critical of that. They've listened to them, added staff. That's sometimes just how it is. I mean, we've seen Chargers, Ravens, trying to think of some other teams, Titans. Sometimes guys get beat up and, you still can't keep moving forward there. So lay off the training staff. They're working their ass off, and that's all we can do about it.
Agreed. Now, the next big topic here is the quarterback position. Mitch Trubisky goes down with a knee injury. It's going to keep him out multiple weeks. Unsure if that will last through the start of the regular season or not. The Bills did sign former Ravens and Raiders quarterback Anthony Brown. We want to give you some information on Brown. 26 years old, played collegiately at Boston College and Oregon. Threw for 7,000 yards, nearly 8,000 yards, and 61 touchdowns over 5 combined seasons for the two schools. He rushed for another 1,100 yards and 9 touchdowns. He's 6'1". He was an undrafted free agent in the 2022 season, brought in by the Ravens. Saw some action in 2 games as a rookie after both starter Lamar Jackson and Tyler Huntley went down with injuries. During that time, he completed 22 of 49 passes, 302 yards, and threw 2 picks. He spent the 2023 season without a team, signed with the Raiders this past January before being waived this past week. So they bring in Anthony Brown, likely just to get them through the preseason, because all you have left is Josh Allen. And Sean McDermott said today that he was planning to play Josh Allen in this Saturday's game. But with all these injuries, you can't risk an injury to your starting quarterback. Not that you ever could, but especially now, more so than ever. So Sean McDermott deciding to keep the starters as a whole out of this Saturday's game and go with the second and third team. But Mitch Trubisky out with this knee injury. They sign Anthony Brown. What is your outlook for Mitch Trubisky? And I guess who out there among the veteran quarterbacks is healthy at this time and ready to step in and maybe take the reins as a backup quarterback if needed?
So I'm not too bullish on Trubisky. I mean, the knee injury
you and a lot of people.
Yeah. Well, they're not bullish for a number of reasons, but I mean, from an injury perspective, unfortunately. So his injury was real subtle. Like, he went down and you could tell he hurt his knee, but he was falling down and the guy came into his leg there. So you would think that the falling down along with going down would kind of lessen the impact of the knee. But the fact that he's week to week says that the injury might be more significant. Like I thought it was a mild MCL sprain. It might still be an MCL sprain, but we're talking grade 2, maybe even grade 3, where you're looking at, 4 to 6 weeks, potentially even longer, another candidate for short-term IR, because it's not that his actual physical play is all that great, but that his knowledge and be able to step in when he needs to, that's where he might be valuable to be put on short-term IR, or, the shenanigans we see with making an active roster and then going to IR afterward. So, it's unfortunate. I wasn't expecting him to be, dealing with a significant injury like this, especially since he finished the series he was in. I think he played another 4 or 5 plays, and then to see him throwing the ball, doing the drop back, and then find out the knee injury is as bad as it is. It's not great, like most of these injuries, but I'm looking for him to probably miss at least the first, probably 4 games, because they're probably gonna do short-term IR and then slowly bring him back. But the benefit is that most MCL injuries do not require surgery. There are some that do, but let's hope that he doesn't have to somehow require surgery, because that is sometimes a longer recovery. And then you're looking, Ben DiNucci is QB2, which isn't a great option.
Right, especially considering he just came to Buffalo last week, and they really had to limit the menu, as Joe Brady said, for him, and really rely on the running game throughout the second half against the Steelers. And probably going to have to do a lot of the same this weekend against the Carolina Panthers. You have DiNucci, who is still a neophyte in the system. You have Anthony Brown, who is completely new to this system. I think you're going to see a lot of runs, maybe some quarterback runs with Anthony Brown this weekend against the Carolina Panthers. A few more injuries to get to before we get on out of here. Quentin Morris really was coming on strong as of late. He's been battling Zach Davidson in that tight end 3 battle that many have been talking about, now battling a shoulder injury. What do you see with him?
He was another one I underestimated. Now, when I look back through and look at the film, he fell down on his right shoulder and he popped right back up. I was like, okay, well, maybe he hurt it, and then out of abundance of caution, he was on some pain. They pulled him. But I looked back at the other plays again after we got the week-to-week designation, and I found another play. His last play, he tried reaching out for the end zone on a pass from, I believe it was DiNucci at that point. And he tried reaching out, and he fell with an outstretched arm, and then he kind of brought it into the last second, landed on the elbow. That could have caused a labrum tear, and that's a much more serious injury comparative to an AC joint sprain. The labrum does help keep the humeral head in place there. And if he were to tore it, that he would have trouble blocking, because you're going to be engaging the block, and all that force can go through his shoulder, and that could cause that to sublux, which is partially dislocate, or fully dislocate, which isn't ideal. And then he's also going to have difficulty catching, because if he were to jar that shoulder and loosen it up over time, it's going to be hard to kind of bring his hands together and secure the ball. So I'm curious to see what they're going to do with him. You could get surgery and have a late return. That's very aggressive. We'll just have to wait and see what happens with him, but I could see him trying to return to a shoulder harness and play through it. I'd hate to see that awesome battle between him and Zach Davidson be won due to injury by Davidson, but we'll just kind of wait and see what happens. But I got the play wrong initially from what we saw in video, and then once you get the designation, thinking that's not right, go back, and there's a better play that might suggest a more serious injury.
Yeah, and it would be a shame, because that has been such an interesting battle to watch. They've been going tit for tat all off season long, have Quentin Morris and Zach Davidson, and really has led me to believe the Bills might keep 4 tight ends. But if Morris is out for an extended period of time, that would obviously give way to Davidson in that battle. The final 2 players we'll talk about here, 2 edge rushers. Casey Toohill, a free agent acquisition who's been off the field for quite some time with a groin injury, and then Javon Solomon exiting that game on Saturday with a calf injury. Solomon looked good in special teams, particularly in that game. So certainly a disappointing sign for Solomon, but getting Toohill back, maybe we start to see what he has to offer, which we haven't been able to throughout this training camp session.
Absolutely. Toohill's been out since August 8th with the groin injury. He went out around the same time that Daquan Jones went out. Toohill's might have been more acute, because Jones is more of a veteran player and they want to be cautious with him. So hopefully Toohill gets in there, put some stuff on tape. Maybe he lands with the practice squad. Maybe he lands somewhere else. It's unfortunate, just the timing of these injuries, but to miss about 2 weeks isn't unheard of for a groin injury, especially when you have to bend the edge like that and get so much power off the leg that you need your groin to really kind of just get around the edge and explode through that. And then as for Solomon, he did a calf injury. suspected he had suffered when he's trying to flush Justin Fields out of the pocket late in the fourth quarter. He looked like he almost, I don't want to say lost his balance, but he looks like it popped on him a little bit, and then he tried to take another step and fell forward, and that's kind of where he lost Fields, because Fields is pretty fast. It's positive. They said he's going to be limited this week. Once again, like we talked about Balin Spector, those guys may be missing about 2 weeks. If it's a minor injury, they can probably work him back in a little bit quicker, but still, he's a rookie. You don't want to rush him along too quickly, especially with the potential run he's going to see at defensive end, given his pedigree in college.
All right, so I think that does it. Dr. Kyle Trimble of Banged Up Bills. Did we leave anything out? Is there anything you'd like to add to this conversation? Feel free to spread your wings here, my friend.
Man, I think we covered just about everything. The only two guys that I don't think we hit on your list on X was Austin Johnson. He's also dealing with a calf. I'd basically copy and paste what I said about Javon Solomon. And then Lawrence Keys, I did read in the Buffalo News that he's dealing with a foot injury. Now, I don't know what happened with that. It happened in practice, so we don't have details on that. But I think we covered everybody.
He kind of came down awkwardly. He went up with a defender, and the defender kind of fell on him awkwardly. And they were looking at his foot-leg area, so that certainly does sound right. And I'm sure the Buffalo News has it correct.
Yeah. So so we need a little more information on that, but I mean, you gave us some context as to what happened. He fell down. There's number of different issues it could be. We'll see them do a bunch of different stuff at roster cutdown day with IR designations, injury settlements, guys moving to active roster. They'll have Reed Ferguson out in the parking lot grilling, waiting to come back in. I think we covered everything. I mean, we covered a lot in a half hour. It's incredible how many injuries are hitting. I'm always busy with this stuff, but this is something I really enjoy doing. And, coming on the podcast and writing, and just people are looking for the information. I want them to provide them not only educational information, but accurate information as well. So I'm glad everybody stops by to check out my stuff, and I'll continue producing content as long as people want it.
And we'll certainly have you back on the show. Hopefully not all that soon or all that often. No offense to you, but hopefully we don't have days like this where we really need your insight, like I said, too often. But before we get on out of here, let's thank our sponsor, Forefathers Organics in Dansville.
Unlock the power of nature with Forefathers Organics, your premium CBD store. We offer the highest quality CBD and hemp products to liberate your mind, body, and soul, helping you live happy and free. Our mission is driven by excellence and transparency, using cutting-edge scientific methods to combat stress and target issues at their source. From potent ingestible CBD to soothing topicals, all our products are USDA certified organic. Discover all natural wellness from farm to table. Visit forefathersorganics.com for more information.
All right, Dr. Kyle Trimble of Banged Up Bills, Satch, telling us good job. I think he's mainly talking to you. Great stuff that you brought to the table. Why don't you tell the people where they can find your stuff, where you appear each week, where you collaborate, and all that good stuff.
All right. I am anywhere and everywhere you're looking for injuries. So you get the site bangedupbills.com. It's updated daily, weekly. You can find the links on X, Facebook, Instagram, Reddit, all under Banged Up Bills. I'll be doing some contributing work for Cover One on, I believe it's a Charge podcast. I'm on Locked On Bills with Joe Marino every week. And then there's another one or two things in the works here. I got to figure out some of the different, iron out the details. So if you're looking for injury information, you're going to usually find me, and I'll be there to provide the most accurate information possible.
All right. And the sirens behind me, I think that's our cue. We'll get on out of here. Thanks to everybody for joining us. Like, subscribe, rate the pod. You can find it anywhere you find your podcast, also on YouTube. And we will see you next time.